How we doing, everybody? And welcome into Wisconsin Sports on the Go with Trage. I'm your host, Trage. We are back. It's a Sunday night, a great Sunday. Lots of good things happened today. Brewers won, Packers won. Just a great Sunday, right? You can't beat it. The Badgers weren't in action over the weekend, so I can't complain about the Badgers. So that's a good day. But I got Kyle from Chomping on the Bit podcast. He's with me today here. Kyle, how we doing? Sunday night. It's a fantastic Sunday. How we doing today?
I'm good. I can't complain at all. It was an interesting day of football. I mean, kind of a weekend because I did catch some college football as well. So yeah, I mean, I'm just happy to have some competitive, great games that came on and I got a chance to check out.
Oh yeah, it was an interesting day. It was an interesting weekend with some games out there. We want to touch into just about everything today while also talking Wisconsin sports because that's what we're here for at the end of the day. So right away, I want to look at the college football slate from this last weekend. We saw a lot of interesting matchups, right? Nebraska and Illinois. That happened on Friday night there. Did that show you how good Illinois is, or did that show you something about Nebraska in that one? I thought it was a great game. I honestly thought it was a great game. Raiola just got a little bit outed by Altmaier. I thought Altmaier played a great game for Illinois. Illinois put a great game plan together, and I mean, it was a good game all the way around. What did you think of that matchup there between Nebraska and Illinois? Does it make you think anything less of Nebraska or more about Illinois?
Probably more about Illinois. I mean, I know Nebraska had, the win over Colorado, but then that kind of depends on how you view Colorado, whether or not you put a lot into that. I feel like Nebraska, looks like they have something with Raiola. I feel like he's going to be all right, but it might just speak to kind of the depth of the Big Ten of sorts, in that Illinois is not a team that you necessarily think of when you think Big Ten and them being, like a powerhouse or anything like that. And I mean, Nebraska was kind of a big deal back in the 90s, but I just feel like it just shows how week in and week out within that conference, like, you have to be ready to play because any one of these teams can knock you off. Maybe unless you're Ohio State and one of like the top tier teams, but I think the whole Raiola stuff is, maybe he was getting a little bit more shine a little too early. I know every time I see Nebraska plays, a lot of the comparisons with Mahomes because of the look and everything like that. And maybe they were feeling themselves a little bit, like I said, after the Colorado thing, which a lot of people, gave them a spotlight to the team. So maybe this humbles them a little bit and they can kind of regain and continue on with their season. But I will say, like you asked, I will say that it's more about Illinois showing than necessarily Nebraska.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Illinois, I said right away, both teams played a great game. Altmaier played great. Raiola, I mean, both had their mistakes throughout that ball game there, a couple turnovers here and there. It happens. It was a great all-around Big Ten football game. You got to love it. The team in the Big Ten, I'm going to throw a random one at you, and this is a surprising team in the Big Ten for me so far. Indiana. Nobody's talking about Indiana. They haven't played anybody great yet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they played Florida International, Western Illinois, UCLA, and then Charlotte. But I'm looking at these final scores and I'm watching this team. Final score against Florida International, 31-7. 77-3, they beat Western Illinois. Then they beat UCLA 42-13, and then they beat Charlotte 52-14.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying that Indiana is going to go. I mean, you look at their schedule, they have Michigan and Ohio State on there. The rest of the schedule kind of works out for them. I mean, Nebraska on the docket there, but Maryland, Northwestern, Washington, Michigan State, Purdue. This Indiana team could end up near the top of the Big Ten just because their schedule is a little bit weaker. They got out of the eastern side of the Big Ten, so they don't have to play all those. I mean, they don't have to see Penn State, right? Indiana, to me right now, it speaks volumes what your offense can do, not just against bad teams, because it's easy to score against bad teams. That's what they say, right? It's easy to score against bad teams when you're a good team. But the way that they're scoring right now, I mean, you're talking 77 points. Now, I get Western Illinois is not a great team, but putting up 77 points in a ball game is still impressive. I don't care who you are,
Mhm.
who you're playing. That's impressive. UCLA putting up 42. I mean, Florida State who just played UCLA over this last weekend? I believe. Oh no, Florida State beat Cal. UCLA played LSU, and LSU put up 34 against them. 34-17 was the final score there. If you're playing like that kind of game right there, right? You're the if this team beat this team and I beat that team, that kind of thing there. Indiana looks pretty good in comparison to what LSU just did to UCLA. So, I mean, looking at that Indiana team, looking at what they've been able to do so far this season, is Indiana a team that you're looking at and you're saying this team could possibly find their way to the top of the Big Ten at some point?
I mean, I guess it's definitely possible. I mean, as you did read out, their next two games will say a lot about them. I know Michigan's been kind of up and down this season.
Michigan's at
Ohio
the end.
State.
Michigan and Ohio State are towards the end of the schedule. Towards the end
Oh,
of
okay,
the
okay.
yep,
I
yep.
thought you were saying that that's what that. But I mean, if they can beat the teams that they're supposed to beat, you get towards the end of the year. Remember, you have the expanded playoff. If they can impress enough and get into the rankings and make it interesting, maybe they sneak in as like a bottom playoff team. It would be kind of odd because obviously when you think top 12 teams in the country, Indiana's not the first one to pop out to you. I mean, Indiana hasn't really had much juice since like Penix left, and even when Penix was there, he had like some injuries that he dealt with. But I mean, look, the big thing for Indiana is they play in the right conference. Big Ten teams will always be looked at in a favorable light. So even if they are able to mount wins on top of each other, they're going to get noticed. Now, with schools like Indiana that mainly are like mid-tier Big Ten teams, that brings pressure upon themselves, though. And it's whether or not they can handle that. Because it's one thing to be Michigan, Ohio State, and teams like that, where week in, week out, season after season, people are expecting you to do great things and you have to deal with that. You kind of get used to it. A lot of these lower name, lesser name schools, that's why you see them kind of pop maybe 1 year and then kind of disappears just because it's a different level when you reach, like a top 15 type ranking and now other teams are now looking at you differently and they play you a lot differently. So, I mean, it's a good start for Indiana. They obviously need to do a little bit more before I could probably say that they, might finish, top half or top five or so in the Big Ten. I don't know if I can say that yet, but they've had an impressive start to the season. Like I said, they haven't beaten like anybody of note, but you still got to win the games because we've seen, look, Northern Illinois went into Notre Dame, beat them. So there's not really many guarantees, especially when you have, NIL and all that stuff that's kind of leveling up the playing field a little bit more than it used to. Some of these smaller schools have big game talent.
And the worst part is you mentioned Northern Illinois there. They lost this last weekend, too.
I
They
know.
lost. So they dropped themselves. They got into the rankings. They dropped right out. That sucked to see there.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, I agree. You got to win the games that you got to win, right? And that's the same for Indiana. You're going to have the back-to-back with Michigan and Ohio State there, but the schedule is favorable. So, and you could have 2 losses at the end of the season there. You got to win the games that you're supposed to down the stretch here. It is going to be impressive. You don't think Indiana with football. You think Indiana with basketball. You don't think football when you think Indiana. So to see a team like that get back to the forefront, that would be something. I wish my Badgers would be right with them there. They've been struggling. We'll see how that all transpires as we go on here. But other games throughout this last weekend, I just wanted to check out some of the other big matchups. Texas routed UL Monroe. It didn't matter if it was Arch Manning or Quinn Ewers at quarterback. They were going to route him. I mean, that's what we saw. A great performance by Arch Manning, though. I mean, I am happy. It makes me happy to hear a guy like Arch Manning who has the talent. He's not just bailing out of Texas because they're going with Quinn Ewers. He's sitting there. He's waiting for his turn to lead Texas. Is that something, we listen? I think Tom Brady said something along those lines about quarterbacks not being ready and not waiting their turn. Is that something that you look for in a quarterback too? Because to me, I like the quarterback that you can build. You build behind a guy. He gets a couple years to get experience within the offense, not being
Mhm.
tossed out there right away. Is that something you wish you would see more in college football? We're kind of getting away from that right now. Is that something you wish you would see a little bit more here, or are you okay with the way that college football is trending right now?
I mean, it's definitely an interesting part of it is because with so many colleges and so many opportunities out there, yeah, you don't want to necessarily sit behind guys for 2, 3 years, and then you get 1 year to try to prove yourself when you're trying to get into the draft. So I understand if you go to like Alabama, but you find yourself behind a like former Heisman, behind a 4 star, and you're another 4 star, but you're like third on the depth chart, and you're looking at them and trying to time it up, and it's like you may not start until 3 years down the line. I don't have an issue if you move on necessarily from that. I mean, the ones I do like have an issue with is like if you go into a school thinking you're the number one guy, somebody comes in after you and takes a job from you, and then you kind of run from that situation. Those I don't know because that could speak to kind of the competitive nature in some of these guys. And once they get to the NFL level, we'll see them kind of struggle, and they'll kind of point back to, yeah, remember they were at so and so school and left because they didn't want the competition. That competition and fighting for your starting job can pay dividends once you get into the NFL, because not your starting spot isn't guaranteed in the NFL either. And if you can't show teams or you know your teammates that you're willing to fight for it, it may not work out for you in the locker room. So, like I said, it kind of depends on the instance in which a prospect moves from a school. But I feel like perfect world, you pick your school, you kind of stay there, and you either sink or swim based on your own ability. And don't like try to make excuses for why you're not playing or anything like that. So I can definitely commend Arch Manning, especially with the name and everything that's gone with it. Like he could have very easily have gone somewhere else, starred, did his own thing, but clearly he just wants to be at Texas and be a Texas quarterback. So I gotta give him props for that. I really do.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, talking about NFL teams, you want to see a guy with that competitive spirit who is going to fight for that job. If he loses the job, he doesn't just bail out right away. I know that was Nick Saban had problems with the NIL and with the transfer portal. Same with Tom Izzo, some of the older coaches, because Tom Izzo said it perfectly. These guys aren't learning how to fail and keep trying. They're just learning to fail and then bail, right? You don't
Yep.
want guys like that. Pro teams don't want, well, I shouldn't say they don't want guys like that because they still draft those guys. But
Yep.
at the end of the day, those guys don't get along with teammates, cause problems in the NFL. They end up with a quick career. They're done, right? The guys who sit around, those are your durable guys, the guys who are willing to fight for a spot, and you love those guys. Those are the guys that fans love at the end of the day. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I love with the name everything like that. Arch Manning's like, I'm okay being a backup. Quinn Ewers' time is now. My time is going to be next year. Now it's turning out to be a little bit sooner because Quinn's out right now. They expect he's day to day, so probably back next week, I would assume. But if not, Arch Manning continues to start at quarterback, and we hope for good things for him there. So Texas, big win. Ohio State, big win. Nothing to talk. I mean, Ole Miss, I could rattle these off all day long. Tennessee, Oklahoma. What surprised you more, I guess? The fact that Tennessee's offense didn't look as good as what I thought it was going to, because Tennessee was just, I mean, this offensive juggernaut all season long. Their defense
Mm-hmm.
looked better in this game than what I expected. I honestly went into this one and I thought Oklahoma had a good enough defense to slow down Tennessee for portions. But at the same time, I'm going into this thinking if Oklahoma's got a shot, it's gonna be a gunslinging match right here. I mean, it's gonna be whoever messes up first, right, is gonna lose this ball game. And it ended up 25-15. So to me, I mean, I'm looking at this game saying I'm surprised how well Tennessee's defense actually stood toe to toe with Oklahoma in this game, forced some turnovers in this one, and played all around complementary football on both sides of the ball there. I mean, looking at this one, was there any surprise in this one to you?
Uh, Probably not really. I mean, like when you look at the numbers from that game, Tennessee dominated the time of possession, and usually when you do that, you're controlling the pace, you're controlling a lot of the aspects of the game. So pulling the game out the way that they did wasn't surprising once you dive into the numbers. Like I said, for me with Tennessee, it seems like it's kind of a continuation of who was it, like Hendon Hooker, his time in Tennessee, a little bit of Joe Milton there. Like Tennessee's had a few seasons where they've started off well, have been highly ranked, and then later in the year there's a loss or two that kind of derails their season. So I want to see if Tennessee is truly legit this year, because I know a lot of people are looking at them as a team that could factor in to a playoff situation. I feel like the talent is there for them. Like I said, I want to see later in the season where there is that pressure. Do they step up and capitalize on it? Like this is definitely a very good win for them. Like I said, nothing to sneeze at. Beating an Oklahoma team, new to the SEC, but they're a storied, program and everything like that. So it's a big win for Tennessee. But I want to see later in the year if they're still playing kind of at this level or not. Because like I said, they've teased this before.
Every year. It seems like that was my biggest question leading up into the weekend was, is Tennessee truly back? Like this game is going to tell us a lot about Tennessee coming into this matchup here. So getting off of that one there, I mean, there was a couple more big matchups, I guess. First off, Bowling Green seems to be hanging with everybody. I don't know what it is, but Bowling Green, they hung with, I believe, Penn State. They hung with Penn State there. They lost 34 to 27. Now they just lost to Texas A&M 26 to 20. Gotta love what the Bowling Green Falcons are doing right now. Wish they would have won one of those games, because then, I mean, college ball playoffs expanded. Maybe, just maybe, we're talking about a team like that at the end of the season here. But I wanted to get into one here. Oklahoma State lost to Utah, but the game I wanted to talk about, Michigan, USC. Michigan's defense is stellar. Like Michigan's defense, they got some dogs on that defense. But offensively, I think USC finally got introduced to old Big Ten football, not new Big Ten football. They got introduced to old Big Ten football. We're going to ground and pound, and we're going to keep doing it until you're tired. And that's what happened. Yep. That's all I took away from this game, watching it, looking at the box, everything. Alex Orji, he goes 7 for 12 on the game, 32 yards through the air. Nothing through the air for Michigan. How did they win this game? Well, they had 2 touchdowns from Mullings there. His long was 63 on that big breakout run he had. And then you also look at Donovan Edwards, the returner there, returning running back there for him. He had 1 touchdown, 41-yard carry there for a touchdown. I mean, the big plays, right? This big play, we were wondering about the Pac-12 and their defenses coming to the Big Ten. Were they going to be able to adjust to a different style of football? Because this isn't Pac-12 football where it's like we're going to air it out. USC likes to air it out. This isn't Pac-12 football. This is Big Ten football. We're going to try to beat you with the ground game. That's what I took away from this is Michigan, though they don't have a quarterback, they found a way. The offensive line started to play better. They found a way to win this game. USC, it makes them question a little bit. What do we have to do to get better? Because my Badgers going to have a game coming up against USC. The Badgers don't have the most dynamic passing game right now, but they're going to try to run the football. They just watched this game and they're saying to themselves, okay, we got the run game. We think we have the run game. We're going to have to exploit what their weakness is in this one. So what surprised you in this game, USC and Michigan?
I think you kind of alluded to it a little earlier, where for USC, Texas, Oklahoma, these big programs that left one conference and went to another one, the first thing you want to see is how do they adapt. And for USC, first chance to face a big name Big Ten school in Michigan on the road as well. I thought they handled themselves really well. I think it's going to be obviously good exposure for them, because when you switch philosophies, because like I said, Pac-12 was spread them out, air it all over the field, high scoring games and all that. Whereas Big Ten, it's trenches. If you win in the trenches, you win in the Big Ten. So this is something that Lincoln Riley and the coaching staff there now is going to kind of change the way that they recruit. Now that they're in the Big Ten, but with this current group that they have, like I came away watching that like I think USC might be okay this year. I mean, I didn't think they're going to be like bottom of the conference and everybody's just beating up on them, but there has to be a bit of an adjustment period. I mean, on Michigan side, the coach that's there is from Harbaugh's coaching staff. Last year, it's the same Michigan football defense, run the ball, real physical. I mean, Orgy probably throws it less than McCarthy did, but Michigan's not necessarily going to blow teams out. They're just going to try to out execute you and force you into certain mistakes, whether it's trying to do something that you're not capable of, and they, with their defense, can stop you and give their offense short field, all that kind of stuff. So both teams, I feel like, played the way I thought. I might have been a little bit more impressed with USC only because I know this Michigan story. This is what they've been for a while. So they're going to stay true to who they are. But I mean, look, time of possession, everything pretty much even, speaks to a 27-24 scoreline. I'm intrigued with how USC navigates a Big Ten schedule.
Yeah, I mean, they played well. I honestly thought, defensively, besides the big plays, they played well in that one. A lot of people came out of that one saying Miller Moss just sucks. I don't think he sucks. I think he tried to throw the ball too much. I think USC's got to find a way to play complementary football, just like a lot of these other Big Ten teams will do to you, Ohio State, Oregon, the other, top teams in there. So definitely some big games over the weekend there. But I got a list here. The craziest things that happened over the weekend. Okay, I got a list of 4, and I want you to take your vote on which one was the craziest thing. So we saw a 64-yard field goal by Temple. That's impressive. 64-yarder, banged it right off the crossbar and in. You got to count it, though. The doink went right this time. Don't get, there's certain fans out there who get upset with the double doink talk. We don't want to talk about it here. We're just talking about a doink that went in this time. The 93-yard punt return touchdown by BYU. That ball, I mean, he dropped it. It went rolling back to the goal line. He turned around, took off with it. It was impressive. My next one. Florida State actually won a football game. They actually won a football game. I mean, I had to throw it in there. I had to take some shots because I think they're still like upset because of last season yet not making it into the college football playoff. Now they're like, it's utter chaos. They won 14-9 over Cal, but Florida State wins a football game, or Michigan beats USC. A lot of people didn't see that one coming. I mean, if you were a bet man, you probably didn't go to the bank thinking Michigan was going to pull off that win. So out of those 4, which one was the craziest thing to come out of the weekend?
I mean, just first reaction, I feel like the BYU return, because I remember watching that play, and it's very easy to panic once you drop it and your back is towards the rush coming at you while you go pick up the football. But that dude picked it up. He turned. He took the long way because he then went cross field, where that's also the biggest problem with that as well, is once you kind of muff your kick, all of the pursuit is coming at you. If you're able to get around like the first or second guy, you usually have nothing but open field. And that's kind of what happened. The first guy tripped him up a little bit. He stayed on his feet. The second guy, he was able to outrun and get outside of him. And once he got to the sideline, there was like he had like maybe 3 blockers ahead of him, and there was like 1 defender left. You're going to win that battle every time. But that takes a lot out of you. Take her from one side of the field to the other, run down the sideline. And, obviously it was a big, big play in the game. I would probably go with that one. Like I said, initial reaction, only because of, like I said, the excitement of the kick return as well. You got to throw that in there too. Like, that's always an exciting play to watch.
the longest college football field goal was 69 yards in 1976. 64 is impressive. Like there aren't many NFL guys who can hit from 64. Like that's impressive. Now he did doink it in, so it was literally 64 on the dot is what his leg gave him on that one because he doinked it in.
Yeah.
That punt return was impressive, but Florida State actually winning a football game was also impressive because I mean, come on,
Sure.
they avoided disastrous start there. You went 93-yard punt return. I'm going to go with the field goal because I have not seen somebody hit from 64 in a while. Not even, I mean, Justin Tucker, I believe, hit. What did he hit from that time? Was it 65?
Yeah, was that like the Lions game or something?
I think so. And then the Cowboys, they just had their kicker go for 64, I believe. He was one off the record. I thought he hit from 64 not too long ago. 64 is impressive.
Those are the two probably best kickers in the league. So, yeah.
I think I'm going to have to go with it. I think I'm going to have to go with the 64-yard field goal by that Temple kicker. That was a heck of a kick. That was a heck of a boot right there. So let's switch gears. Here. Let's get to the NFL. I want to talk a little bit of Packers. We were talking about the Packer game as it was happening. You have the Titans as a playoff team, so you're really invested into that team right now. And, well, my Packers were on, so I was watching. 30-14 was the final in that one. And I guess my biggest takeaway from that game, and we're going to have a lot to talk about here, but my biggest takeaway from that game was the Packers played some of the best complementary football on both sides of the ball that I have seen out of the Green Bay Packers in a very long time. I mean, you look at the box score in this one, and just about everybody got involved in this one. And then you look at the sack total. 8 sacks on the game. 8 sacks on this ball game. Jair with the pick 6. And McKinney had an interception in this one. I mean, crazy. It was crazy to see this defense just completely I was listening to a good friend of the show on Integrity Sports Network there, Jory. She was talking about her Titans the other day and how they improved the offensive line. And they did. I mean, they went out, they got pieces, they drafted, trying to build up this offensive line. But the defensive line for Green Bay, I mean, how often Will Levis was just under pressure he didn't even have time to move. There was times where guys came through unblocked. I mean, Hafley, I loved what Hafley did because at one point he sent 6 guys. Not many NFL teams are going to be ballsy enough to send a house, and he sent the house on it was going to be a pass play, and he sends the house. Like, you got to love it. I mean, initial takeaway, before we get into this game as a total, initial takeaway from this one is what?
Oh, I mean, look, there's a big difference in, like, for Malik Willis going into a week of preparation, knowing you are the starter, as opposed to filling in for the starter through injury. So that speaks to Matt LaFleur and his coaching staff and their preparation. You're 100% correct about Tennessee in that their offensive line did not show up well against a Packer defense that's pretty good. And Hafley, who I know really well with him coaching at BC, watched him a lot. There's one thing that you knew about his BC teams is that defensively they were going to be tough, and he's brought that to Green Bay. So I obviously root for him to do well. I mean, that's where it was won. Malik Willis was given time to make throws. He pushed the ball down the field. I kind of thought they were going to try maybe Jacobs a little bit more, but they were able to make enough plays with Willis in the passing game. And defensively, they got a couple of turnovers, which really helped. So, I mean, impressive from them. I mean, I know you brought up me picking Tennessee as a playoff team. Sitting at 0-3 is not looking good right now, but I don't know. It's a weird year. Like, it might be one of those years that a team can start 0-2, 0-3, and still find their way in. Like, who knows? Like, I'm still there with the pick. I'm not going to change it, obviously, because it's out there, but I'm not going to completely give up on it yet. I think even in that loss, like, Will Levis made throws that make you go, see, there's a good quarterback in there. And then he makes some decisions, whether it's holding the ball too long or whatever, where you're like, that's the kind of thing that has to be coached out of him still. So you're still going to be up and down with him, but it was an impressive win from Green Bay for sure.
And part of the Levis thing too was we allude back to the offensive line. When he was moving the football, I mean, he had time. He was standing in there. And I know I heard some of the announcers there saying, well, you got to know when backside pressure is coming. You do, but he was getting leveled by, there was nobody blocking Cooper coming around the edge or whoever it was. There was nobody blocking him coming around before he got smacked. So there's a little bit of a difference in that too. I mean, you pointed out the main guy, Malik Willis, coming out of this game. 13 for 19, 202 yards, 1 touchdown. So Tennessee has Malik Willis. They give up on Malik Willis. Like, this isn't our guy. We can't do anything with this guy. Let's get rid of him. So they send him up to Green Bay. Matt LaFleur gets him. Now, he probably, wouldn't see we know he wouldn't see the field if Jordan Love was out there, but Jordan Love gets hurt. Now we see Malik Willis. We're starting to see some of the things that Malik Willis can do. And what he can do in the run, the RPOs, is absolutely beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. Well, that's what I took out of this game. My biggest thing with Willis was his decision-making early on. He doesn't, like you were talking about Levis there, where he's sitting in that pocket and he's waiting too long. There's a fine line, but I thought in this one, Willis showed poise. He showed when the rush was there, he stepped up, he noticed the field was open in front of him, he tucked it, he ran, and he bust out some big ones. That's the biggest thing that I took away from Malik Willis's performance, and also that he could throw the ball too. All that I heard from Tennessee fans leading up to this one was, good luck with him throwing the football. You guys are going to have to run the football. He can't throw. I saw some impressive throws in this game by Malik Willis. He had the one to Watson. He had the one coming across the middle to Dobbs in this one. I saw some impressive throws out of him today. And talking about decision-making, his decision to, there's nothing open deep. Let's just dump it off to Kraft, or let's just dump it to my running back, take the short little gain, or like I said, tuck it and run. Just those little things in Willis's decision-making that I was impressed by. And, everybody was kind of joking about it. They're like, oh, the Packers, they ran for 50 sometimes against the Colts. They didn't open up the playbook for Willis. LaFleur is not going to do that for him. He's not good enough to open up a playbook. I tell you what, that playbook was wide open against the Tennessee Titans. He showed about everything that you could show outside of just constant airing it out. And I love that. I love that out of him. So I guess my question is to you. I mean, you've watched the Titans a little bit more than I have, and you also talk to Jory all the time about her Titans there. With this Titans team, does it speak volumes to Matt LaFleur as a head coach for what he's been able to do with Malik Willis, or does it kind of point negatively towards the Titans, who had this guy in the room, but they couldn't figure out how to utilize his talents in the right way? Which one do you think it actually points more towards in this one? Is it LaFleur as a head coach, or the Titans organization as a whole not putting him in the best spot to succeed?
I mean, I would give all the credit to probably Malik Willis' maturation, as well as Matt LaFleur's game plan. The biggest issue that he had when he was in Tennessee was, well, one, most of the times when he went in, it was because the starter was ineffective or got hurt, and he was kind of just thrown out there. And when he did that, a lot of times you could see the game was like speeding up to him. He'd drop back, he'd get real jittery in the pocket. He would, just start dancing around, darting around, and then he would take a hit. Like he said, what I've seen from him today, last week, when he drops back, he's very, calm in the pocket. He's going through progressions, picking out a guy and throwing it. He wasn't doing that in Tennessee. So because of that, I can't necessarily blame Tennessee for moving on from him, going after Will Levis and deciding that Malik Willis was on the outs. They brought in a veteran backup in Mason Rudolph to back up Will Levis. I completely get that. Rudolph can show Levis some things that, Rudolph has been around for a few years, that he's seen Malik Willis can't necessarily do that because Malik Willis was learning the same things Will Levis was at the same time. So I would give all credit to Green Bay, and maybe that another part of it is Tennessee. You had Mike Vrabel, defensive-minded coach. You had Derrick Henry, the very run-centric offense. Now he's in Green Bay, where Matt LaFleur is an offensive mind. So the preparation is probably a little bit different. So yeah, I would give it all to Matt LaFleur, preparation with him, the game plan around his skill set. I give the Packers all the credit for that one. And I don't fault Tennessee for their decision in any way. Like I said, he wasn't this quarterback there.
Yeah, sometimes it's right place. I mean, right place,
Yeah.
right coach. We've talked about it. I know, good friend of the show, Aaron, there. He's always on Fridays there for the weekend preview. He always says, Brock Purdy is his big guy. And he always says, without Kyle Shanahan, Brock Purdy wouldn't be who he is. You could look at the same with Tua down with the Dolphins. I mean, you have those guys. And Malik Willis, for some reason, Matt LaFleur has found the best in him. And you just hope it continues for him. I mean, maybe he ends up somewhere else finding a job, and that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome because that guy's a great guy. I mean, end of the day, Malik Willis is a stand-up guy. Like, that's a dude that if you asked me to go to dinner, I'd be all over it. He's paying. I mean, of course, he's paying.
Right.
Like, I'd go to dinner with the guy. That is for darn sure there. So I loved what I saw out of Malik Willis in this game. Looking at other pieces in this one, I don't know if it's just me, and I wanted to get your opinion on that, but the ability of the Packers wide receivers, Wicks, Watson, Dobbs, doesn't matter who it is, Tucker Kraft coming out from the tight end spot, the ability for them to block downfield is just impressive. I don't know what else to say besides it's a thing of like beauty. Watching them guys, and what makes it even better is you can have guys going downfield to block, but sustaining a block, having a good block, and also not getting penalized when you're going down the field and blocking. That's what I saw in this game from the Packers, was opening up holes. I mean, you look at that Emmanuel Wilson, it was a little screenplay out to Emmanuel Wilson. And yeah, he had the offensive lineman pulling out there for him too, I believe. Myers ended up out there. There was a couple other guys, I can't remember off the top of my head, who ended up out there. But you had Kraft out there lead block, and you had one of your receivers setting the edge. Just watching this Packers wide receiver core, is it something to see that, or I mean, that I'm seeing, and I wonder if you're seeing the same thing watching this Packers team, is they're not pass catchers. It's not like these guys are just pass catchers. They're some of the best blockers on this team too. I mean, they go out there, they're holding blocks, they're lead blocking for Jacobs or whoever it is, or Jaden Reed on some of his end arounds. I mean, are you impressed watching this group for the Green Bay Packers, just their poise and their ability to block down the field?
Yeah, I mean, look, when you're dealing with wide receivers and tight ends out on an island and having a block, that speaks to effort, speaks to dedication, speaks to commitment to doing whatever you can on each and every play, to play winning football. Those are all aspects that go into that when you're asking a wide receiver who is skilled enough on their own, running routes, making catches and everything like that, to now in a play that they know they're not involved with, stay locked in to finding their guy, blocking correctly, none of these holding penalties or anything like that. So yeah, I'm definitely impressed by him. And I do think it speaks to, kind of the reputation that, some of these guys got with Rodgers last year, where a lot of people felt like Rodgers didn't have the best year because these group of guys, I know they've added on since then, but Watson was one who overlapped both of these quarterbacks, and he was seen as almost a failure a little bit because he couldn't connect with Aaron Rodgers. And I think now what we're seeing from him and these other wide receivers, maybe it was more about Rodgers and his inability to maybe want to bring along young wide receivers at this point in his career. Whereas when you got Jordan Love, who's another young guy, it's easier for those guys to connect. Matt LaFleur all of a sudden looks like a good coach because he's not overshadowed by Rodgers. Now with this group, he's able to just be him, install his game plan, and these guys are executing it really well. So I'm not necessarily sure that I'm like surprised that they are this good at just blocking in little things like that. I just think it speaks to an organization that's very confident in their talent right now and think that off of last year, what they did, obviously Jordan Love has to come back because, yes, Malik Willis has played well these past 2 weeks, but you'd rather have Jordan Love back there. That if all things are clicking, they're all healthy, this is a team that could make some noise in an NFC playoff run. And I feel like these guys know that there's an opportunity for them to potentially be a make a Super Bowl appearance or anything like that. And I feel like this is them dedicated to doing whatever they can to win games right now because they know it come January, the little things you do now mean a lot more then.
And part of the thing with the receivers and this whole team as a whole that I love the most is it's the unselfish play, right?
Yeah.
It's the technique and it's the unselfish play. You don't have that glorified number one, right? You get Stephon Diggs in there. He wants his catches. And you get even a guy like Devontae Adams. He wants his catches. These guys want the ball. And I get that. You want the ball in your hands. You're a playmaker. But this receiver core for Green Bay, they asked Christian Watson after he had no catches in that game against the Colts, or I think he might have had one catch against the Colts. They're asked about his usage, and he's like, I don't care. Like, I'm just here to help the team. Whatever helps us win at the end of the day. And you look at these stats, well, Willis has been in there. I mean, you don't have receivers that are cracking off, 10 catch games for 100 plus yards. You don't have that, but they don't care. They're winning football games right now. That is all that matters to them. And that's what I think I love the most is the unselfish play, the team football that's really being played by the Green Bay Packers right now. I mean, they set a lot of not records, but milestones in that game against the Titans. They had the most sacks in a game since 2005 when they played the Chicago Bears. And then also Xavier McKinney became the first Packer with an interception in each of the team's first 3 games of the season since 1978. That was John Anderson back in 1978. So just some all around, impressive stats. And then you look at their interception total on the year. I mean, right now, this Packers team, I believe they have 7 interceptions. They might have 7 interceptions there on the season. Last season, they had 7 in total, right? They had 7 in total. They were tied. That was tied for the fewest in Green Bay Packer history last season when they had 7 in total. They already met that mark this season. That just speaks volumes to what Hafley's doing on the defense, putting these guys in the right position, also getting a guy like Xavier McKinney into the room. I felt like he was very underrated. Not a lot of people talked about him coming out of the Giants there because, well, he's on the Giants. Nobody really knows about him that much. But man, oh man, this guy's a star. This guy is a definite star, and he's showing it right now for the Packers. And everybody's favorite guy, Jair Alexander. I mean, he had a pick six. You got to love that there, jumping a route and taking it to the house there. But looking at this defense, Devontae Wyatt up the middle there, he is a game wrecker. Like, it doesn't even have to show up in the box score for me sometimes. I'm going to ask you this, okay? Because I said this last week on the show, and, I don't know. I want to get your opinion. At the end of the day, Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, I want him to have tackles for losses. I want him to have sacks. I want him to have some impressive stats when I look back on the 2024 season. But when I think of a defensive tackle, I want them to be game wreckers. I don't care if they have, a sack in a game. I don't care if they have a tackle for a loss. I want them constantly pushing back, whether it's a guard, whether it's a center, whoever it is that's blocking them. I want them to push them back. I want them to put that quarterback in duress. I want him to have to try and make a throw like Levis did where he's rushing things. I want my D tackles to put guys in positions like that. And when I watch Devontae Wyatt right now, even a guy like Kenny Clark coming up the middle, those guys are game wreckers. And Devontae Wyatt, to me right now, has taken a huge step forward. He had 5 tackles in this game. He had 4 tackles in this game. He had 2 sacks in the game. He had 2 tackles for a loss in this game, and he had 3 quarterback hits. If that isn't speaking to a guy that's taken leaps and bounds over what we saw last year, I don't know what is. When you look at a defensive tackle, are you looking for the stats in that D tackle, Or are you looking for a combo of stats and also a guy who just disrupts plays? You don't maybe see him in the stat book all the time, but he's constantly in that backfield, constantly making some kind of noise and making a quarterback have to flush or move to a side or step up, whatever it is. Are you looking for both ends of that deal?
I mean, I feel like when you're like evaluating how well a guy's doing, it's eye test. I feel like because if you're a corner and you're a lockdown corner and quarterbacks don't throw your way, obviously you're not going to put a lot of numbers on the box score. But if you watch the game, you're like, hey, they're staying away from that side because of his ability. That's impact. If you have a linebacker that runs all over the field and gets tackles and everything, doesn't necessarily mean that they're great at their position, just means that they get into the right position to make a tackle. A lot of times for your linebackers to do well, the guys up front have to do their job. So when you're talking about D tackles, obviously depends on scheme and everything. You could dominate as a D tackle just by forcing double teams from the opposing offensive line. Because if they double you, that leaves maybe guys on the ends one-on-one. And if they beat their matchup, yes, they get the stat of a sack or hurry or anything like that. But coaches will look at that and say, the job from the D tackle made it easier on them. So kudos to the D tackle. So yeah, D tackle, it's more than numbers for me. You said like what Wyatt had a few quarterback hits. Yeah, those aren't sacks, but they're effective because now you may speed up the quarterback's process because they know that this guy who's right here closest to me, give it a couple of seconds, he's going to be right in my face. And you're talking about 300 plus guys, quarterbacks don't want to get hit by that play after play. And it's like you said, there were a couple of throws that Levis made today where he might have gone in like a half snap sooner than he wanted to. But in the NFL, that's the difference between a completion, incompletion, or a turnover. So, I mean, on a whole, I thought the Green Bay defense, not just the D tackles, they played well. They took advantage of an old line that struggled blocking. I mean, it was bad enough that Tennessee had to replace the right tackle mid game. That kind of tells you all you need to know about how it was going up front for them. But it's not like they were blocking against air. Like they were dealing with the scheme that was brought forth by Green Bay. That I mean, they gave up 14 points. In 2024 NFL, you give up anything less than like 23, you had a pretty elite day. So 14 is nothing to sneeze at. Like that's a really, really good performance from them. So like I said, I know what Halfley does on defense, so it doesn't surprise me necessarily. It's definitely good to see because Green Bay is a team that I just like the direction they're going in, and if they can continue this later on in the year, the wins will be there for them. They should be a playoff team. They should be a factor come January and well, possibly February, but especially January. Like I expect to see this team deep into the season playing like this because they have the pieces to do it for obviously, and the coaching's there. So now it's just going to be game in and game out, executing the same way. Staying away from the unnecessary errors and all that. Penalties that you don't need to extend drives out for offenses that don't need that kind of help. They should be fine.
Yeah, no, it speaks volumes because we knew what the Packers had to do to beat the Colts and the Titans. Malik Willis had to play good enough football. The run game was going to have to get going. The offensive line was going to have to play well. But on the flip side of that, the defense was going to have to be stout. They were going to have to do their thing. Halfley was going to have to draw up some great games, try to put pressure on the opposing team to try and beat him. And, I mean, your Colts scored 10. Titans, 14. That's impressive. That is 2 weeks of impressive defensive football. You got to love it. End of the day, you got to love it. And last but not least, I got to give a special shout out to my boy Daniel Whelan, the punter for the Packers. Yeah. Average punt of 49 yards. Wow. I mean,
Mhm.
wow. Like I don't love, it's so hard to hype up a punter. It's so hard to hype up a punter. Like you're talking about that stat, and people out there right now, they're probably like, "Who cares? Like he's a punter. Like he didn't do that much to contribute to this win."
Mhm.
I tell you what, you got a good punter who can pin teams back and can do what Daniel Whelan's been able to do this season. Hats off to you. I mean, 6 punts for 49-yard average. Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. End of the day. And Braden Narvison, 3 for 3. He got lucky. The one miss that he technically had wasn't counted as a miss because there was a penalty on the play. That was awesome.
Mhm.
That's okay. You didn't tarnish the record on that one. You didn't tarnish your daily stats on that one. So that's okay. It helped out my fantasy team too because I got Braden Narvison on there. Didn't count against me. So great stuff there. Great stuff there. So getting out of the Packers, we're going to get more into the Packers in the midweek report there. But getting out of the Packers for now, let's get to the rest of the NFL here. Right now, we're seeing the Atlanta Falcons lead the Kansas City Chiefs 14-13 at the half. Interesting.
Mhm.
Kirk Cousins has found out how to play in prime time, and it's scary. You don't want that guy to figure out how to play in prime time there.
Yep.
But let's get to the rest of the slate here. So the Browns somehow lose to the Giants. I don't know. I didn't think that Daniel Jones could make another quarterback look worse than he is, or what he's been playing as at least. He made Deshaun Watson look like he was worse than what he is. So Browns take the L to the Giants. Bears take the loss to the Colts. Vikings completely, wow. I mean, 34-7, they just mopped the Texans. That one had to be my surprise of the day, but I want to get to that in a minute here. The surprises out of this slate. Eagles Saints. Eagles get the win 15-12 in a barn burner of a game. I turned that one on. Oh no, it flipped to it after the Packer game. It flipped to it automatically. And they said it's really picked up here in the fourth quarter. And I'm like, it's 12-7 at that point. I'm like,
Yeah.
when did it pick up? Like right now? Like this team's driving? Chargers take the loss to the Steelers. Justin
Yeah.
Fields, he's doing his thing with the Steelers. That's interesting news right there. Broncos, I did. This is another one. Broncos 26-7 over the Buccaneers. Did not see that one coming. Andy Dalton lights the world on fire for the Panthers. I mean,
Yep.
36-22 over the Raiders. Now it is the Raiders, but
Mhm.
Andy Dalton lighting it up. You gotta love it if you're an Andy Dalton fan. I don't know how many of them are left out there. Seahawks beat the Dolphins 24-3. Not surprising. No Tua. Dolphins kind of reeling right now, but maybe they'll figure something out. Ravens get their win. Beat the Cowboys 28-25. Cowboys lose 2 straight at home after I think it was like a 16-game win streak at home. They snapped it. Now they've lost 2 in a row. Not good
Mhm.
things going on in Jerry World down there. The Rams, they beat the 49ers. I did not see that one coming, to be honest with you. Now, the 49ers are banged up. Doesn't help, but did not see that one coming. And then the Lions, they outlast the Cardinals. This is a pesky Cardinals team. I wouldn't want to face them if it comes down to a playoff game. That's for darn sure. But 20-13, the Lions get the win there. So, looking at that NFL slate, Kyle, any surprises? What was your biggest surprise in these games coming out of the weekend here? Because there's a couple of them in there where it's like, whoa, I did not see that coming.
Yeah. Well, as surprising as the Carolina score is, I actually predicted the Panthers to cover in that game and said that there's an opportunity for them to get a win because I've been on a show where the question was with the Giants and Carolina, would they win a game or not? And I said they will both win a game. And my thought was for Carolina, their best chance to win would be the first game with Andy Dalton. Because I feel like every time you make that quarterback switch, there's always like a boost in morale from the team. Not to say that, Bryce Young was the end all be all with all their issues. All if you're Bryce Young and you watch Andy Dalton put up 36 in the same offense that you struggled with, doesn't help the confidence. But I would probably say the Pittsburgh Chargers one was probably the biggest surprise to me. I thought the Chargers were going to win that game. Now, I did think that because of the physicality of both teams and both coaches, like when you think Harbaugh, you think Tomlin, you think smash mouth football. So I'm not necessarily surprised that neither team, got over 20 points in that game. But for a guy in Justin Fields that, the Bears like to have us think was kind of a broken quarterback, funny, he's gotten to Pittsburgh, a more stable organization, and all he's done is lead them to a 3-0 record right now. And he played really well. 25 of 32 for 245, a touchdown and an interception. He puts up numbers like that. I mean, I think Tomlin would love to not have the interception, but if he is an efficient passer, doesn't turn the ball over, with Pittsburgh's defense, they'll win. They'll win some games. I mean, I'm surprised they're 3-0, but I got to give them all the credit. I mean, I was one who thought Fields needed to get out of Chicago to thrive, but I didn't think I would see this. I assumed Russell Wilson was going to be the starter. I mean, the biggest thing that might have happened to Fields' career is that Russell Wilson had a tweaked calf or hammy and has been out. And Fields got the opportunity. And it's like you can't really take the ball away from him now because he's winning games. So I'm intrigued by them because they obviously look like the best team in that division right now. Only 3 games in, and we'll see what they do when they go up against Cincinnati or Baltimore or what am I blanking on here? Cincinnati, Baltimore, or Cleveland, right? And we'll see if the Fields honeymoon extends out past these 3 games. But I think the biggest surprise was Pittsburgh winning that one and Fields doing it, making plays with his arm. Because the games before they won with running the ball, kind of simple, short passes, getting in the field goal range, kicking field goals, and relying on that defense. This game, the offense showed up and made plays. So that was the one for me. And like I said, there were plenty of surprises. This has been a weird Sunday in the NFL.
I just found out about a minute ago that I was watching this Sunday night football game in Spanish. I did not know there was a Spanish channel for it, but all of a sudden it came to the halftime show, and I'm like, who is this? Like, there's some Spanish guy on there. I'm like, who is this? And all of a sudden I'm like looking at this. I have the subtitles on because I don't have the volume on in the background there, But I had subtitles on. I'm like, this is all in Spanish. I'm like, what is going on right now? So I just found out today there's a Spanish NBC channel. I just got that now. I agree. I mean, that was it. Justin Fields, I said it too. I did not think the Bears were putting him in the best spot to win. And now, and honestly, that's going to be my surprise game is the Bears do it again. I don't understand. The Bears they had to have seen the final between the Packers and the Colts. They had to have seen the Packers ran all over the Colts. So why, when you go into a game against the Indianapolis Colts, are you having Caleb Williams throw the football 52 times? 52 times is a lot of times, right? That's a lot of times even for Patrick Mahomes to throw a football in a game. 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He hasn't cleaned up that problem yet. He's trying to force balls, but when you're in an offense and you're calling an offense right now, if you are the Bears, that puts him in those situations where he's making bad decisions. You want to feel bad for the guy, but it's also the Bears. I don't care, right? The Bears are the Bears. They can find a way to screw up things. They might screw up Caleb Williams yet. I'm going to be honest with you. They might screw up their shot with Caleb Williams to actually do something with this team because they cannot play call. They don't have a clue what's going on in Chicago right now. This team they should be 0-3. They should be 0-3. That Titans game, if Will Levis doesn't, I don't even know what he was thinking when he threw that pick 6 that gave the Bears the lead late. I don't know what he was thinking, but when he flipped that ball out there, you know what? Honestly, when I saw that replay, I was like, oh, the Titans must have been losing, and that must have been late in the game. No. They were winning, and there was no reason to throw that football. Now, that was a young quarterback making a not-so-good decision, but, you should be 0-3 right now if you're the Chicago Bears. This offense, not impressive. The defense, impressive. The Colts did to you what they want to do to the Packers. They could not run the ball against Packers. They found a way to run it against you. Anthony Richardson did just enough in this game to not screw it up completely. He threw 2 picks. That's still a problem. But outside of that, 10 for 20 for 167 yards. Thank God I benched him on my fantasy team because I could not handle that anymore. That would be one of my surprises is this Bears team and how awful it is of a start for him. I thought maybe they would ease him in, do some short little routes for him, try to utilize. You brought in DeAndre Swift. What was the purpose of bringing in DeAndre Swift and upgrading the offensive line if all we're doing is trying to air it out? It doesn't make sense. You could have put some Joe Blow running back there and just let him try to run, 9 yards? I mean, how many carries did DeAndre Swift have? I just exited out of that too fast there.
He had 13.
13 carries for a guy that you brought in specifically for upgrading the run game. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense at all. So that is, I wouldn't say it's a surprise finish because the Bears can find a way to screw up a game. I would say I'm just surprised on how awfully coached, well, I shouldn't say that, how awfully coached the Bears are, how awful of a start they've had because of the coaching. Like, it is just bad. It is bad football all the way around. But this is going to lead into my next question. And it's a grueling question for me because as a Packer fan, I don't want this to be true. Are the Vikings for real? Like, I honestly thought, I'm watching this Texans team, they're coming to town, and I'm like, CJ Stroud, this Texans defense, they got playmakers on the offensive side. Now, no Joe Mixon. That doesn't help. Joe Mixon out there does change the offense for the Texans. But he gave up 34 points to the Minnesota Vikings. Sam Darnold goes 17 for 28 for 181 yards and 4 touchdowns. Aaron Jones runs all over you. I miss Aaron Jones in Green Bay. I like Josh Jacobs. Don't get me wrong out there, Packer fans. But I love me some Aaron Jones. Is this Vikings team for real? Because this Texans team, I think, is for real. I think they're a definite playoff contender, a team that, if they got hot, could maybe compete with the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, that's a stretch. I know. But they're a team that offensively has playmakers that could do it. But I look at this game and I'm like, okay, maybe it's just one of those games, right? The Texans weren't feeling it today. The Vikings found some big holes. They made things happen. But this is week after week with the Vikings right now. This is week after week with Sam Darnold leading this Vikings team. I mean, on the season, he's got 657 yards, 8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. His QBR is sitting at 73. He's ranked 5th in all of football for all quarterbacks in QBR right now. I mean, we're talking about a league right now where Andy Dalton and Sam Darnold both just had fantastic days yesterday. Who would have thought? Like, a year ago, if I would have told you Sam Darnold is going to lead the Vikings to a 3-0 start, and the Carolina Panthers are going to be in such that is a terribly ran organization too, so don't get me wrong. The Bryce Young is not the issue. There is more issues there. But now it looks worse because Andy Dalton steps in and leads them to a win when Bryce Young couldn't do it. So it looks even worse for Bryce Young out there now. But if I would have told you a year ago, Andy Dalton and Sam Darnold would be 2 quarterbacks that we're going to be talking about in week 3 with impressive starts, would you have believed me? Like, this is just different right now. This is different, but getting off topic there. You can answer that question. And do you think the Vikings are for real?
I mean, no, I did not have the Dalton Darnold experience in week 3 being a storyline in the NFL. I did not think that. One, I completely forgot that Dalton was sitting on somebody's roster as a backup. So that's the first surprise. Darnold, I think Darnold speaks to not necessarily the team that drafts you has the best plan in mind for you. Like, he's in with the Jets. The Jets are an organization that's historically been, run defense. He gets there, struggles, especially against the Patriots. The one game that the announcer said he was seeing ghosts, that seemed like that was it for him in New York. It could be that for a guy in Darnold, playing in a big market like New York isn't for him. He went to Carolina, but like we said, Carolina is a mess. He didn't necessarily play well there, but that kind of speaks more to Carolina. Now he's in Minnesota with offensive coach and O'Connell, with playmakers around him, Aaron Jones, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. I don't know, man. I think they are legit. And I'll say that my reasoning for it is Brian Flores and what he's doing with the defense. I feel like that is something that can continue on all season. And if your defense plays well enough, that takes less pressure off of Sam Darnold at the quarterback position. I mean, look, Houston, it's a decent offense. Houston has playmakers of their own, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, guys like that, Stephon Diggs. Minnesota held them to 4 of 14 on third downs. If you're not efficient on third downs, you're not winning a lot in the NFL. They also, there's another number that I saw that I liked from them.
Stroud threw
2
picks.
interceptions.
So, yeah. Yep.
So that right there, you're keeping them inefficient on third down, and you turn the ball over twice. You're going to win a lot of games. And Flores, we all know, is a really good defensive mind. And I feel like with that, I think Minnesota is legit. Now, I still think even after 3 games, if you want to maybe doubt what you're seeing with Sam Darnold, I think that's valid because of what we'd seen in the years prior. You know, as teams get more and more tape on him, can he still put up numbers like this? Because it's still early on in the season. You know, he might be still surprising some teams. But as we get into like the next 5-6 weeks, you know, is he still playing as efficient as he is right now? If I was going to sit here and guess, I'll say Minnesota's going to hang around through the season. And I'm like I said, I'm giving a lot of that credit to Flores with this defense and what he's done. And this is a defense minus Danielle Hunter, who actually went to Houston in the offseason. And that was their big pass rusher up front. You know, you took him out of the equation, and the defense is still playing really well. So I'll say they're legit while still holding out concern about Darnold. And Darnold got hurt today, missed a couple of plays, and I know a lot of Vikings fans are probably gasping at that because they lost McCarthy in the offseason. Darnold took a hit like behind his leg, you know, bent back kind of funny, got up limping. So their season could have derailed if he couldn't, you know, get back into this game because I don't know who the third string quarterback is on that team. I can't say that
Mullins or Brett Ripon. And who did Ripon? Who is Ripon?
I think it was Mullins because Mullins. I thought Mullins took a snap or two when Darnold was getting looked at.
Yep. Where the heck was Brett Ripon? I remember that name from somewhere. Was he always with Minnesota?
No.
Denver. He was with Denver.
He was with Denver, and I think he was with the Jets too for a little bit.
Oh man. That would have been rough. That would have been rough to have to do.
Right. So their hopes are on the right shoulder of Sam Darnold and him staying healthy all year. So I think they're legit. I'll say that they are legit right now.
So Minnesota's legit. Now, question to wrap up the NFL here. Staying in the NFC North, we know they're going to be the Lions. They'll be fine.
Yep.
The Vikings, we're thinking they're a solid team that's scary. My Packers got them next week. But one last team. We talked about them a little bit before. The Bears. Will the Bears get right? Will the Bears get right? Just real quick. Will they get right and right the ship at some point this season?
Well, they have to find balance in their offense. Until they do, I think these struggles are going to continue. Because like you said, Caleb Williams has no business throwing 53 times in a game unless you're down big and you're just airing it out late. Because if you told me Caleb Williams threw 53 times, I was probably like, they probably lost like 40-10 or something. And he was just forced to throw it just because whatever. This game against the Colts, it was like 7-0 up until like midway through the third quarter. So you had no reason to become one-dimensional. I know you mentioned DeAndre Swift. You also have Roshan Johnson, who you drafted like 2 years ago. And you have Khalil Herbert, who's been there for a few years and is a quality backup. I don't understand their offensive game plan. I don't know if they're trying to prove something with Caleb Williams, but they need to look themselves in the mirror and be concerned with the direction of this offense. Like, ease Caleb Williams into these games, establish the run, get some play action, get him out in some boot, get him comfortable, and then we'll see. Like, if they continue this way, I don't think they have any shot of getting right. Because Caleb Williams just isn't that good of a passer right now.
No, no, I agree. Bad decision making right now. Bad decision making by him. He's trying to force balls in there, and he's being forced to throw the ball a lot right now. So bad combo right now in Chicago. For me, I'm okay with it. For Bears fans out there, I'm sorry that you got to deal with Eberflus and company for now. Hopefully, management will get rid of those guys, get you some new coaches, coordinators, whatever you need,
Yes.
whatever you need. Hopefully they figure that out down there. So get out of the NFL. One last thing before we wrap up. A little bit of a random sport that we didn't know was a thing. Roof ball. Kyle, you ever heard of roof ball before?
No, not at all.
No, me neither. I saw it. It was on ESPN News, apparently. It's a sport. It is a sport. Now, imagine it when you were a kid and you were throwing the ball up on the roof of your garage or whatever it was, and you let it roll back down, you catch it, right? And you keep doing that. That's what this sport is. So in the one that I watched was the vent. There's a vent. So you're throwing the ball on the roof and you're attempting to hit a target on the roof, which is a vent or a pipe or whatever it is, and to catch the ball when it rolls back down. So you find a target, whatever that target is, that's what you're aiming at on the roof. Find a safe place to catch the ball. Make sure that you're not playing next to a parked car in a moving street or anything like that, next to a chainsaw that's running. I don't know. Make sure you're safe.
Right.
Right? Make sure you're safe. Score a point. So the most basic way to score a point is to throw the ball on the roof and catch it on the way down. Another way to score is to hit the target, which is worth 5 points. The most points are earned by throwing the ball around the pole. So you got to throw it around the pole, get it to bounce around that thing and come back down. That's worth 10 points. If you catch it on the way back down, that's worth 1 point. The first roof ball tournament was held in January of 1999. That tells you how long this sport's been around, and we had no idea. I'm out there like little me's out there in the front yard throwing a ball up on the roof, and I was probably the best in the nation at one point, and I didn't even know it. I didn't even know that I was the best one out there. I mean, is this one of the most odd sports that you've heard of? Is this one of the most odd sports that you've heard of?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it sounds like a sport that would have been in dodgeball when I can't remember the character's name, but he was reading like obscure sports quarterly, and he was like a aficionado on these random sports that popped up on ESPN the Ocho. Like this sounds like a sport that would have been in that magazine. I just think it's interesting that now all of a sudden a lot of these sports that, like you said, when you were a kid and you were just outside, you had like a tennis ball or something in your hand, you would throw it up on the roof just to be like, oh, let's see if I can catch it. And the fact that these are turning into like legit games and sports and leagues out there speaks to I guess, the creativity that's going on right now, the recreation that people are out there making competitive. Like I definitely respect it because I've seen some other interesting games myself. I can't remember what they call it, but like there's a form of soccer where it's three teams playing at the same time, three goals, and like three rosters of teams out on the field. I have no idea what they call it.
The Olympics? Was that the one in the Olympics? Was that handball? Was that the handball game that I was
No,
hearing about?
this is like it's like a smaller field. They have three goals set up, so three teams each have a goalie in front of their goal. So basically, when you have the ball at your feet, you have two different options of where you want to go to score. Because as long as you don't score on your own goalkeeper, you can get a goal that way. And it's just constantly moving because a goal gets scored, the goalie takes out of the net, gets to one of his guys, and you just keep going. It's I don't know what era this is right now, but these are the kind of sports that are out there. I've seen kickball on TV in a competitive league. I've seen wiffle ball. I've seen it all. So it's like games you played as a kid just because you needed to waste time doing something are now legit, and you could be on TV for it. If you could go back as a kid and be like, yeah, I probably would have taken wiffle ball seriously because I could have been on ESPN in the future.
That wiffle ball game is intense. Some of those pitches that they throw it nowadays, I couldn't even.
It is nuts.
Yeah, I couldn't even look at them. Like, man, oh man. And then kickball, there is nothing that beats ESPN the Ocho at 2 a.m. when you're watching kickball. Like that is some intense kickball games too. I mean, I used to get intense when I was a little guy too playing kickball, but these are grown adults taking it to a new level there. I mean,
Yep.
man, oh man. So that's about all we got. That's about all we got for today. Kyle, I mean, I mentioned it at the start of the show, but let everybody out there know where they can find you across, Facebook, wherever it is. Let people know where they could find you out there because you got great stuff out there and people need to hear you.
Yeah, I mean, you can find me chomping at the bit. You can find me on Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube. I think, and also the audio version on like Spotify, Google Podcasts. Well, I think Google Podcasts is now like YouTube Music or something. I don't know. There's something that they changed in there. I can't keep up with it. It's available. Apple Podcasts as well. So I'm definitely out there. Check me out for sure.
Make sure you find this guy. He's got great stuff, always keeping you in the loop about anything major that is happening in the NFL, NBA, everything in between. This guy is all over it. That's where I go for my information. You just got to find that guy. That's where I go for my information there. So, with that, that's about all we have for today. It was a great show. Like I always tell you guys, like, subscribe, follow. Make sure you tell your friends. Let them know where to find us here. Kyle, he'll definitely be back on the show coming up soon. We'll get him back on the show sometime. Aaron will be back on the show sometime. So we'll definitely have more great sports talk for you guys. And make sure if you're in there, if you're in the live, you're checking out the live, make sure you comment in. Let us know what you're thinking. Anything crazy, ridiculous sports takes that you want to give it to us, you let us know in the comments down there. But with that, for Kyle and myself, we hope you guys have a great night. And I will talk to you guys again on Tuesday night. But until then, deuces.